Thank you, dear. We're here with Virginia DeMarce, one of our most popular Ring of Fire best-selling authors. And she's got a new book coming out, you'll be glad to know. It's a really fun book. The title is Things Could Be Worse. Virginia, please tell us about your new book.
Well, it is this particular book.
Oh, great cover.
People have seen it. It is. It's a really nice cover. The artist made Pastor Kastenmeier look considerably handsomer than he was in when I was writing about him, but I don't think we can complain about that. Oh dear, we've lost the...
Oh, don't worry, Walt's back there.
All right.
We're together, it's all good. Mm-hmm. So what is the book about? I mean, it's about the father there, but what, not to give any spoilers, but telling people a little bit about it. What would you say?
The background of it goes to the decision in the story I wrote called the Rudolstadt Colloquy, according to which a lot of local and not so local German Lutherans were wandering into Grantville by 1633, not just passing refugees, but people who were going to be living there permanently. And they had the discovery, which is somewhat startled them, that very, very few of the uptimers of the 3,500 or so who had been transported, maybe a dozen were Lutheran. And those were, historically enough, split between the two types of Lutheranism that were already feuding in the 17th century in Germany, although they used slightly different words for it. So the local, or nearest to local, German authority, Count Ludwig Günther of Schwarzburg-Rudolstadt, agreed that he would provide churches for these, not within the Ring of Fire, but on the edge of it, on his own lands. He would see to it that the buildings were built, and then as the manager of what had been a state church, although there were no longer, because of the arrival of the uptimers, state churches, he would obtain clergy for them. So the first of these was on the road toward Rudolstadt, St. Martin's in the Fields, which was a private joke for me that almost nobody seems to have noticed because of the famous St. Martin's in the Field in London, England. Yes, Joy?
I was laughing. Sorry.
For which
keep going, please.
Pastor Kastenmeier, and then later, a couple of years later, he builds the other one on the opposite side of the Ring of Fire, St. Thomas the Apostle, otherwise known as Doubting Thomas, and furnishes it with a pastor named Oswald Griep. So that is the basic situation. We have stories about Lutherans of the 17th century attempting to cope with the arrival of the Ring of Fire in their midst.
What made you decide to go with this? Because this is a lot of time spent with Lutherans and this pastor.
Well, partly I did it because nobody else had done it. Partly I did it because I was acquired into the wonderful world of Lutheranism by matrimony, and therefore have more of an interest, or at least a familiarity with it, than I think the majority of our authors do. So I thought, this really is something that would be causing on the local level an impact. All of a sudden, the denominations within the Ring of Fire, who had always thought of themselves as majorities, are going to be very much in the minority. Other people were taking care of the Catholics with Father Kircher and Father Smithson and Father Heinzerling and a variety of stories, but nobody else seemed to be doing the Lutherans, and they were right in the middle of a Lutheran territory. So I thought I might as well.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. Way to go. Well, you've covered a lot of territory in 1632. You are a very prolific writer. What is your favorite story or character in 1632 to write about?
The favorite character I have written about so far, I think, is Duke Henri de Rohan, who is in the Troubles with Huguenots book. He's just has a lot of depth to him, and he left a lot of writings behind him. And he was also,
good. So,
in his own way, a kind of 17th century way, a quite civilized man, less prone to violence than the average. Not that he wasn't willing to revolt against the King of France, but still, basically,
wasn't everybody.
at a high level of civilization.
Very, very cool. Very cool. Now, where are you going next, writing wise?
Well, I have, at the moment, beyond the stories that Walt Boyce has in hand for the Grantville Gazette, I have 9 stories in various stages of completion on my computer, and I have another book that I'm in the process of plotting out.
Very cool.
The 9 stories.
So your readers have a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, I hope to get rid of, course, winter's coming, and I will have absolutely nothing else to do. So I expect a fair amount of that stuff written. But the stories are on various themes. I have 2 more stories coming on that focus around Philip Massinger's English comedians touring in Germany with Tom and Dick Quiney, William Shakespeare's teenage grandsons, in tow, whom I have been enjoying a lot because I can, when I write those stories, mine a lot of dialogue out of both Massinger's plays and Shakespeare's plays and slot lines in when they fit as naturally as they possibly can into the conversation, which is a fun thing to do. And currently, of course, we have Tom Quiney, who at 17 now is regarding with a rather jaundiced eye the appointment of the admiral's son as the Episcopalian bishop of the Diocese of Grantville. So he is doing satires. So that is
very cool.
Then I have another set of stories that is following Mark Cavriani and Susanna Allegretti, who were introduced in the Bavarian crisis to solve the need for a pair of young lovers, who at that point were what you might call a pair of teenagers who were getting fond of one another. It's taken 3 years to get engaged from that point on. But one of the things I try to keep in mind when I'm writing on the younger characters is that I don't want to go overboard on what in the time period it would be reasonable to expect someone of that age to be doing. So if I'm writing Mark and Susanna, if I'm writing the Quiney brothers, if I'm writing Jerry Stone, I'm allowing in time for them to get educated and grow up so that by the time they get to their early 20s, what they do will have a reasonably prepared background rather than somehow, they spring from the head of Zeus like Athena and all prepared. So that's one of the things that I try to do. I have another one coming along, which is unconnected to anything else, and I hope will be funny, that has the tentative title, Too Many Cooks. And it simply deals with every woman who in passing stories has been referred to as being a cook for one or another of the important families in Grenfell. And as these ladies get together for their occasional social events, their unexpurgated views of the world in which they find themselves. That one is just a bagatelle with which I'm entertaining myself one way or the other.
That sounds like a blast. But then a lot of your work is, I mean, as you were talking about the young folks being able to grow up, I think that's part of the essence of why your writing has such depth, is because there is so much room for movement for your characters. They're not flat. They're interesting. In fact, I was pleased to see you picked up one of my characters and used him in your stories. In Bremen, the hair knob. So, because you did such a good job with him, now I feel like, oh my gosh, I've got to keep up. So thank you for taking him.
Oh,
I appreciate it.
Herr Knaup was a really good character because the way he was interacting with his teenage offspring, you presented it in your story from the perspective of the teenagers. Dad is being such a pill. And I looked at it and thought, well, given what little Joy has told me about the man, he has troubles. He has tribulations.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. So I loved how you fleshed him out.
A reason that he's being a trifle impatient with them.
Well, I can understand. I mean, the poor guy's trying to hold up his end in the town, and his daughters are going crazy, and his sister is going crazy, and gosh, I mean, he's got troubles. The only person not going crazy is his current wife. Yes. And who knows what she may do next? We don't know.
I don't know either. I haven't taken up with that. But that is fluid. It's, for instance, when we did the dialogue, the conversation on the Stone family for the RFCon. I was talking to Mercedes Lackey and Eric about what I was doing with Jerry Stone. And I said, one of the things that I did to put him on the track where I had him, which was having him react to the unfortunate events associated with the first effort of assassinating Urban VIII, was that first I needed him to come to terms with the death, and then I needed him to come to terms with the fact that if he was going to become a seriously important character, he needed to acquire an education that most downtimers of the professional class would regard as adequate, which is why I had him go into this, oh dear, I'm going to make up for this by becoming, and this leads us back to the things could be worse, even though he doesn't show up there except in a couple of minor scenes. I'll study to become a Lutheran pastor. And then other books come together. If you look at The Trouble with Huguenots, you will find that there's one sentence there. It's just one little sentence, but it's a sentence in which August von Bismarck says, Jerry, are you sure you're doing this for the right reason? I mean, it's not a throwaway sentence, because behind August von Bismarck, who, although he agreeably turns Calvinist in order to marry Marguerite, is in fact a Lutheran. What he's thinking about is that whole Martin Luther got caught in a thunderstorm and was frightened by the lightning and took a vow to become a monk, and then he had to back up on it years later when he started the Reformation. So Bismarck is going to start prodding Jerry to think about, are you trying to earn your way into heaven here? Are you really being properly Lutheran and relying on divine grace? Come on, think about it, guy. Once Bismarck starts pushing, then Dean Gerhardt will eventually, when the time is coming for Jerry to transition out of the arts faculty into the theology faculty, ask him the same questions. And other people will start asking him the same questions. And the next time you see Jerry, for me, he's going to be having to take a gap year, and I'm going to send him off to the Spanish Netherlands with Reuben and Bismarck to be dropped into the diplomatic circle of Peter Paul Rubens.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you are not kind to your characters, are you, Virginia?
I don't kill off as many as a lot of writers do.
That's true, and I appreciate that personally. Well, let me ask you. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
I do try to keep most of them alive, because if you don't keep your characters alive, then when you come to write another story, you simply have to invent a whole new set, which is a lot of work.
You're right. You're right. It is a time saver. Well, now let me ask you, because you did not start out as a writer. I talk to a lot of folks who come up as youngsters and they go, oh, I want to be a writer. You had a life before this. And in fact, as I understand, you kind of had to be drugged kicking and screaming into writing. Is that true?
Well, writing fiction, yes. I've been writing nonfiction most of my professional career. But I had, back in college, which was in the late 1950s, taken a creative writing course to fill in a slot. And at that point, I had been assured that I had absolutely no aptitude for it whatsoever.
How rude.
Well, this was in the 1950s, and you have to realize this was the University of Missouri, and it was creative writing. And we were supposed to find multiple layers of significance in what we wrote. And unfortunately, my mind is not allegorically inclined. So the professor and I sort of agreed to be polite to one another and parted ways.
Well, sometimes that's better.
And from then on, I wrote historical stuff and technical reports for the federal government and things like that. Writing for technical reports for the federal government pretty much beats out of you any idea that you need to have a muse to inspire you. Basically, what inspires you when you produce those is the deadline by which they have to appear. Plus, your writing is one part of a committee, and you know that anything you produce will be vetted by the solicitor's office. So basically, you learn to write what needs to be written.
I totally understand. I started out nonfiction myself, so it's good practice then. I think Terry Pratchett learned a lot as a nonfiction writer for many, many years too.
So basically, I write nonfiction. Going back again to the, not something that was online, but a conversation before one of the sessions that we taped for the con. The moderator looked and said, this is your book, Soldiers for Sale? And I said, That's just the latest publisher's attempt to put a snappy title on one of the commission books I wrote back at the time of the bicentennial, which was originally called German Military Settlers in Canada after the American Revolution. And that's what it was about. It had almost nothing to do with either military life or the mercenary nature of it all. It was when they took their discharges and settled down in Canada, which about half of the garrison troops in Canada did. But basically, that was the kind of thing I did, very fact-based and very focused. So when Eric wanted me to write stories in this, I wasn't at all sure that I could do it, but he dragged me through the first couple of them and then set me to co-writing books with him. So it worked.
Well, we're all glad he did. He must have seen that spark in there somewhere and thought he had to drag it back out. So I'm glad to hear it. Well, now, have you ever been tempted to write any fiction other than 1632?
I have. I have tentatively, in fact, passed some of my ideas past Gorg Huff. If Paula hadn't drafted him to be her writing partner, I would have loved to write with Gorg because he is so good at pushing you through when you're at some kind of a mental standstill. And yes, I have ideas about things like that. I don't know if I'll ever have time to do it, but I do have some ideas floating around. And presuming, considering that my 80th birthday is later this month, presuming—
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. But anyway, presuming that I keep both physically and mentally well, I may get around to it one of these years.
Very cool. Well, we all thank you for writing all your 1632 stuff because it keeps us all reading, and a lot of people love you for that. And I thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to tell your readers that I've missed?
I guess I would just say, because I am a historian and because I am writing in the series as alternate history, I know I'm making things more complicated than a lot of fiction is. There are just a lot of people involved, and they all have their own agendas, and it's not always a clear case of black and white or even absolutely distinguishable motivations that people have. So it's not wham, wham, bam, bam. The good guys are going to win and the bad guys are going to get smashed fiction. It's more like, maybe we'll manage to muddle this through.
Well, isn't that more like real life?
I think so.
I mean, history is rarely black and white, as I've seen it. It seems to be a whole lot of just muddling through. So maybe we all want that kind of alternate history written instead of just the old, as you said, wham, bam, let's get through this now, So I appreciate your writing, and I think your readers really appreciate your writing, or they wouldn't keep reading and are more excited about your new writing and are looking forward to it. And like I said, I am so excited. You want to hold up that book one more time for us?
I have what?
Hold up your book one more time for us so we can show it to the viewers. Okay. Things could be worse. Now, at the time of COVID that we're living in, that's almost a hopeful title. So I have to thank you for that.
All right.
And I want to thank you for your time today and for your writing. And we all look forward to seeing more of your fantastic stuff.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye-bye.